Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of 4Fusion Friday. Thanks for spending some time with us, I should say, on your Friday evening, or maybe it's Saturday morning where you are, or whatever time you happen to be catching us. Thanks for tuning in. We do this the first Friday each and every month. Alongside me, the co-creators of this particular show, Mr. George Lamie and Mr. Eric Porter. And we have a very special guest, as we do each and every month here. We've got the great fusion guitar player, Mr. Jeremy Green, has joined us. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
That's right.
There you go.
Those of you who have not heard that album, you need to. It's really good. We've talked about it here on the channel. It's quite entertaining and exciting if you like guitar-oriented fusion music, and who doesn't, right? So, Jeremy, once again, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you carving out some time and listening to some records with us, right? And talking about
My pleasure. Yeah. We're going to do this in person sometime with beers and those kinds of things. But yeah.
Yes. I two thumbs up to that. So awesome. So as we generally start these episodes off with some new selections, new releases, and of course, from here on in, I will turn it over to George. Take it away, George.
All right, new releases. First one is Ali Usiskin Trio Zone, the fifth album from this UK drummer. I get some definite Schofield vibes here. With guitarist Carl Orr, kind of sounds like John to my ears. This is a Bandcamp release. I don't really have a lot of background. I just came across it, but if you like stuff in the Schofield vein, check it out. Then the other two are kind of recent reappearing of old 70s favorites. You got Shakti, This Moment. This is the return of the Indian Legends, their first album since 1977. If you're familiar with their work, you'll want to check into it. For me, this has got too many of those tradition Indian vocals, the yodely stuff. I don't mind conical, but the yodely stuff is not my bag. But you probably want to check it out just to see what they're doing after all this time. That's also on Bandcamp. And the other one is Soft Machine, Other Doors. I don't know about this one. Apologies to our friend Leonardo, but this one doesn't move the needle for me. It's a little mellow. But I know a lot of our audience likes that stuff. This is a pretty laid back affair, and if that's your thing, I urge you to check it out, because you got to support all the comebacking bands of legendary musicians. Anyway, that you can also check out on Bandcamp. It seems like everybody's on Bandcamp.
Yeah. And you guys can expect a review from me on that in a couple of weeks. Actually, it's funny you bring it up today, because Theo Travis reached out to me this morning and says, "Can I get a CD in your hands for review?" I'm like, "Sure, absolutely." So,
and they're actually touring, I think. I think they're going to be in Albany October time. So I think they're touring in the fall.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I do want to mention too, our intrepid reporter Eric was caught a fest recently up by him. Tell us about that.
It was the weekend of June 24th and 25th. I did write a review that's on the website, but Saratoga Jazz Fest, 2 days, great stuff. I got to see, actually, I was Snarky Puppy was the headliner for Saturday night. Bonnie Raitt was the headliner Sunday, but Pat Metheny, which I thought was a little odd, Pat Metheny opened on Sunday. Great set, doing the side eye. Got to see Hiromi for the first time, which huge thrill. She was fantastic. Saturday, Corey Wong absolutely blew me away. Totally high energy, great stuff. George, I know you know more about him than I do. But I'm going to be doing some checking out, because horns, his drummer was phenomenal. I wish I knew the names of these guys. I'm going to have to go look them up, but great 2 days of, all different stuff. I think it was Chucho Valdez, also on Saturday, piano, Tower of Power, just great 2-day lineup. And they have a main amphitheater. They also had a small stage where, and unfortunately, it wasn't between sets, so it was hard to catch both acts, but they had a smaller stage where a lot of other bands and artists were going on. Sometimes it was between sets and sometimes it was during the main acts. So hard to catch everything, but, and little tip of the cap to Mike Jacobs, got to meet him in person. He's been on the show a couple times and hung out with him for the weekend. So just a great weekend of music all around.
Sounds amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going on after Pat Metheny?
He was first on Sunday. I was really
That's
surprised,
insane.
really surprised.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a getaway day. Maybe he had a gig the next day or something.
It
Yeah,
could
maybe.
be. And he did do a long set. He probably played, God, I want to say close to 2 hours. I think he was the longest set. He played even longer than Bunny
Wow,
Rogers.
that's long for an opening
Yeah.
set for day two. Wow.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was day two was there were only 4 headliners. It was Metheny, Hiromi, St. Paul and the Broken Bones, who I didn't know. They were more like R&B than jazzy, and then Bonnie Raitt closed the show. So
Her Hiromi, I saw her that trio stuff she does with Simon Phillips, and oh my, that's just insane to me. Like she's next
Yeah.
level.
she's a whirlwind boy, and she
Yeah.
was fantastic.
Amazing.
Cool.
Well, the square this month is the second of our regional squares that we've been deciding we want to do. So we're going to Canada for this one. We got a real life Canadian here from Toronto. So the 4 albums in question are The Code, Bigly Debaya, 2000, Sloche, Staticone, I think, 1976, Spaced Out, Eponymous 2, 2001, and UZEB, You Be Easy, 1984.
Before we go ahead here, how many are you guys familiar with any of those before this, or?
Well, I got them all, but I don't know about these guys.
Really, only Spaced Out was the only one I was familiar with.
Right.
2 of them for me.
Who was the other?
The Code and Spaced Out I had heard before. The Spaced Out I've had since it first came out. The Code I got from George a couple months back, so I've had a few months with that.
Right. Interesting.
We have a nice variance of experience level here. So Eric, what is your number 4 this month?
I'm gonna probably show a little of my bias here, but I'm putting UZEB at number 4. And I think it's due to the 80s production and sound. A lot of the keyboard sounds and the electronic drum stuff just didn't really connect with me. I mean, there's some great, you could tell the playing is great. I think Pork Chop probably is the one where I said, I heard that and I'm like, God, I wish it was more like this than everything else. There is some nice stuff. I mean, Fearless had that really nice kind of, I think it's kind of his bass feature track on that one. A lot of good guitars, but I think to me, I hate to say it this way, the cheesy keyboard sounds, the electronic drums really kind of distracted me. I had a hard time with this one, just sitting and listening to it. You know, I didn't know it before. So when you give us the assignment, I start listening right at the beginning of the month. You know, and I liked a lot of the stuff I heard. You can tell, obviously, the talent level is very high. But I think it just, to me, had I grown up with it maybe, or had I been listening to it since it came out, might be different. But I think I was just really kind of, whether it's the production and the sounds that were used, that was just kind of a put off to me, I think, in a way. So that's my number 4 is UZEB.
I like to keep a little something from a bunch of different eras, but that's the risk you take with 80s stuff is dated sounds.
Yep.
Would you end up having at 4, Pete?
I have UZEB at number 4 as well. So my only real exposure to UZEB is live albums. So when I listened to this album, I was kind of like, all right, I agree with everything Eric said. I don't like the production. It's just, it sounds like it came from the mid 80s, and it does. I don't really like keyboard sounds on the album. I find that because what I'm used to hearing from this band are a little bit more fiery live recordings, that this sounds kind of restrained to me, this album. But there's some good playing on here. It's classy stuff. You really can't say anything bad about it. I really like On Top has got a really good song from Michel Cousson. Is that how he says his name?
Yep.
He's got a really unique style. Like, he's a really good guitar player. I like him. But the synth sounds just aren't for me at all. I like Miles Away. I mean, Caron sounds great on it. He's such a great bass player. Hit It. It's got some nice grooves. Pork Chops is amazing. I wish the rest of the album was like that. That's a really fun, funky, blazing fusion tune. And, that's what I really expected from this album. I didn't really get it. I think, I don't know if the live cuts were on the original album or is that's part of a reissue, but the live cuts that I heard, I don't know where I checked them out. They had 2 live cuts at the end. And I thought those were terrific. And I'm like, that's what I really like from this band. Right. I like the live stuff. So overall, it's a solid album. I don't dislike it at all. I just wanted a little bit more fire from it. It just seemed very safe to me, but it's good stuff. It's good stuff. But it was my easy number 4 in this pick.
Yeah, the 2 live tracks are on every version. It's a really weird thing. Their debut album was Live in Bracknell, and that was vinyl only when it came out. So when they decided to put it out on CD, they put all but 2 songs on this Live in Europe album with another live gig, and then they had these 2 songs left over, so they just stuck it on this album.
That's really? Kind of like the Allman Brothers thing all over again, right? It's like, it's okay. Can't fit everything on Live at the Fillmore, so we'll throw it on the next studio album and throw some live stuff on there. Yeah, that's a bizarre decision, but hey, whatever.
I'll go next. It's my number 4 as well. I like this album, especially the first 3 songs, On Top, Miles Away, Fretless. Fretless, it's funny, the song is called Fretless, but the solo sounds like piccolo bass to me. There's a run in there that's actually sounds like Holdsworth, but playing on bass. It's a really cool legato line in there. That's like, every time I hear it, I'm just blown away by it. Then comes Entre Ciel et Terre. This is one of the sleepiest ballads I've ever heard. They did a ballad hits album, and that was like the lead track of that album. That's what it was called, and that was like the lead track. It's a little soporific for me. Like everybody else is saying, Pork Chops. I love that song. This version and the live version is on Absolutely Live with Didier Lockwood. It's great. And I like the live tracks. I like all of it except for the 2 ballads. The 2 ballads, the other one's not a ballad. It's a solo bass piece from Caron. But it's kind of, it's just harmonics and stuff. That one doesn't do much for me, but I like every other tune on here. But I don't know. It just... it doesn't have the punch of some of these other ones. So I ended up putting that at number 4. What do you got, Jeremy?
Hey, number 3 and number 4 for me are kind of side by side, but because you guys all went with UZEB, I'll just throw that in as my number 4. Could be my number 3. Where I get soft on UZEB is, during the late 80s, early 90s, around here anyway, those guys were like royalty, right? They every Wicked player that I knew was deep into UZEB at that point. Like the Noisy Nights album and Club albums were like, that's their Spirit of Radio and Moving Pictures albums, like that's their 2 where their style just came together. So for me, when I hear UZEB, it's kind of like seeing your brother walk into the room. You haven't seen him in a while. It's like, yeah, it's UZEB. Yeah, I love these guys. But yeah, I mean, the dating of this is really bad. Like not like 80s. I don't like 80s recordings in general because I've never been a fan of that 8-bit kind of keyboardy drums. Like it's weak and thin, digital sounding, which was cool if you're Thomas Dolby or something. You're trying to do a sound of the Cars or stuff like that. Like some of those 80s stuff that works and it's an advantage. But in fusion, I find that works very, very hard against it, and it just hasn't aged very. I'm sure if you were at the show in 1984, maybe it would have sounded cutting edge and amazing. But I was a little too young to be at that show. But And I'm also not a fan of UZEB as a 4-piece. Like this album had a full keyboards. I can't remember how many, but a bunch of them had a lone keyboard player as well as the trio. To me, they'll always be the trio. And like I said, like those two albums, like if you guys aren't familiar, check out Noisy Nights and Club. Those two albums are two of my favorite all-time fusion, hands down. And the cool thing was they were doing synth stuff. They all had a synth on their, like the trio, they all had synths. The bass player had a synth. The drummers had drum pads, all that stuff. So all the stuff you hear was all triggered and happening. And it was just very cool and hip and exciting at that time. And I think sonically those albums have held up better, but this one, no. Pork chops, like you guys all said, insane, right?
Yeah.
Talent is insane. No, I can't sit here and say a bad thing about UZEB because they did so much for me personally. And Michelle's on my album too. Like he's one of my heroes. I love the guy. He plays like a monster, and yeah. So that's my spot.
All right. 3, Eric.
Spaced Out. And Pete, I don't know if you were at Trenton. I believe they were the Sunday opener in 2002
Yep,
for
I
Near
was.
Fest.
Yep.
So I had bought this. I did when, and I've said this before on the show, when the Near Fest lineup would get announced, or as they were announced, I would buy something by one of those bands if I wasn't familiar with them. I really enjoyed their set that Sunday morning. I thought they were incredible live. And then going back and listening to this, Fafard, amazing bass player, a little too up front in the mix sometimes for me. In this, he's great, you know, so it's nothing against his playing. I just think sometimes there needs to be more of a balance. And I get a lot of him sometimes. The one thing that wears on me, and Jeremy, I'll be interested to see what you think on this one. The guitar tone on this, it's very samey throughout, and it's like wah to the 10th degree. It's just a little overdone for me. But they do some great unison line playing. And I know this is 2001, I think, also guilty of a few very cheesy keyboard sounds in certain spots. But overall, the playing is fantastic. Like I said, for me, they can be a little frenetic. It can get a little too chop fest and maybe not as much. I'd like maybe a little more song structure or maybe more melody to latch onto at times. But absolutely, the playing is great. I just get a little fatigued, I think, with the guitar tone throughout this record. And, you know, other than that, there's nothing bad, I guess I can say. I hope I'm not saying anything bad, but, you know, to me, that's just kind of where these guys fall. I'd like a little more composition here. Maybe it just feels a little chop festy to me. So that's my number 3.
What are you thinking, Pete?
I swear to God, Eric and I did not share notes, but he basically said everything I was just going to say. I bought this when it first came out, or I bought it or was giving it to review. I don't remember, one or the other. And I saw them at Near Fest and I loved them. I thought they were great live. And I remember when this album and all their albums came out, I was heavily into them because I was thinking, wow, this is meaty, aggressive fusion, chops like crazy and whatnot. And man, that bass player is terrific. And boy, those guitar solos are terrific. And I mean, really, there isn't anything bad you could say about it. But man, in revisiting it recently, when we got this assignment, I found that I'm not really as enamored with this band like I used to be. And Eric hit the nail on the head. It's like I find there aren't a lot of compositions here. The chops and the playing is incredible. It's really good. It's from a musical perspective, it's really impressive. But I just find a lot of this is kind of like just meandering improvs to me. And I think that I almost rank this at my number 4, but because I think the playing is so amazing, it's hard it was hard for me to put it at number 4. Because I mean, Fafard sounds amazing, incredible on here. He's such a great bass player throughout the whole album. I mean, you know, Sever the Seven is a terrific song, and his bass playing is just popping all over the place there. I agree. The guitar tone on the album, and I think there's a couple players on here, right? Kind of sounds samey from person to person, track to track. It's all really good, and I love wah wah, but it's like I don't know if it fits well with kind of the pieces on this album. I don't know, but there's some good tracks on here. Jamisphere is really cool, scorching solos on it. Infinite Ammo, it's got a cool organ solo. I mean, there's some good stuff on here. Lost Train is really good, but I just I was expecting when I revisit this, because I hadn't heard this in a long time, that it would have rekindled my love for it from 20 years ago. And I was kind of finding that I don't dig it as much as I used to. So, but I put it at number 3 just because the playing is, otherworldly. But I think there's just not songs here for me, and I like improv stuff from time to time, but I just, I'm not as impressed with this as I used to be. But it's still cool, right? It's still great playing on it. So, yeah, that's my number 3.
Well, these top 3 are very close for me. I'm really splitting hairs here. And I was telling Pete earlier, there's a couple things about each one that I'm not okay with, and I couldn't decide what's more important out of those. My number 3 is Spaced Out too, and this is the one that I predicted that we both said we used to like it a lot more than we do. I think it's because we're metal guys, and back in 2001, someone that brought the heavy to fusion was like, wow, godsend,
Yeah.
And I still like that about it. It's heavy, it rips. I mean, The Lost Train and Infinite Ammo, those 2 songs back to back, I love that stuff. But like Eric said, this dude with the wah, man, throw that thing away or turn it down or something. I don't know. It's too much for me, and maybe for them too, because this is the only album that guy's on. The main guy on here, Louis Cote.
Yeah,
this is the only album he did with him. So maybe that's a thing. I like what he plays. If you listen to the notes, but it's too whiny. I don't know. I'm not sure. And the other thing is, I think the first 6 songs are of a certain quality, but the last 3, starting with The Alarm, they get a little more avant. And The Alarm in particular, when you decide to make a car alarm a part of the song,
Yeah,
I don't know.
that was annoying. I'll give you that.
Yeah, it's too bad because the background music I really like. They get a little freeform and it sounds cool as shit, but I don't know. The last 3 are a step down from the first 6, and that's just enough for me to. I had it 2 like a couple hours ago, but now I'm going to put it at 3.
So for me, this was, if I'm going to be honest, this was my number 4. It's like I said, the UZEB and this are the 2. It's, before I say anything, these guys are monsters. Everyone on all these albums, they're all playing off their ass. So anything sort of negative I say is in the spirit of review, obviously. When this kind of fusion typically for me is not really my thing. I love it, but I like songs. Like I like when it's, I'm a Pat Metheny, UZEB, Tribal Tech. There's a strong form, and the improv comes off of that and it builds off of that. And when you lose that, to me, I start wandering. There's so much going on. It's like everybody's doing something heavy all the time. I don't know where to look. I don't know what to listen to. The guitar tone did drive me insane as well. I do love the aggressiveness. Like you guys, I like hard music, and I dig that about that. I think these guys would be amazing to see live. Certain kinds of fusion, you really need to be there, and then other stuff comes off on a recording very well. But this is the kind of fusion to me that it's almost like a lot of jazz and bebop. You really got to be in the room to really get it, so I wouldn't listen to this very much, only because of that. Like, I know a bass player did this album because of the mix, because the bass is right up front. And I without even looking at it, I was like, this is the bass player's album. And then when I Googled it, sure enough, it is his thing, right? So, yeah, it wasn't really my thing, but I get what they're doing, and I know that they had a ton of fun recording this, but I just didn't get the fun as much. It's the kind of thing actually I could listen to like one track in a mix, but a full album of that, like I had ear fatigue on track 3, and it's really hard for me to honestly give an opinion in that condition. You know what I mean? I was so overstimulated. There was so much, and again, they're all so good that they're all demanding of my attention, and so that I'm a pretty simple dude. I like to be able to focus on one thing. I'm getting old, right? So yeah, it's not for me, but it's great, but just not.
All right, Eric, what you got it to?
Well, this is where it got tough. And I guess I love Canadian guitar players. I've got Kim Mitchell. We know my love of Jerry DeVilliers Jr. John Pelosi blew me away on the Code. I love his playing. It is my number 2, but I think he's fantastic. Fake Paradise, that second track, kind of a slow burner, but great guitar and keys on this one. Smoking lead from him. He's terrific. He's another one I'm going to have to seek out some more stuff of his, because I just thought he was fantastic. As If was another one that was kind of cool. That one's kind of a schizo, because I think that one changes up a lot. It really slows down, but I think there's some really nice roads towards the end of it. And again, Pelosi kills it on guitar. The problem, I think, with this one for me, we just talked about how we all really love the heavier stuff. There's some snoozers on this one. Words from Ben, I think that one kind of picks up at the end, but that one's a little slow for me to take. Corner Pocket is one that it's funky, groovy, killer guitar, and I'll say that over and over. But killer guitar in that one. And I think the other one that I thought was kind of was that Maria's Grace. Towards the end, that one was kind of killed some of the momentum they had. But Pelosi, to me, when I heard this, I'm like, God, I loved it. Right out of the gate, I love this guy. So there was a battle for 2 and 1, but the Code came in at number 2. I think maybe just because if there were 1 or 2 more, if they took out 1 or 2 of the slower tracks and threw a couple more heavy hitters in there, this probably would have got to number 1. But I will be seeking out some other John Pelosi stuff, because he's fantastic.
Pete, you gonna keep following Eric or what?
Yeah, I mean, my 1 and 2 were tough, and I really wanted this to be my number 1, but I'll tell you why it wasn't. First of all, the good stuff. The playing is terrific on here. There is, like 80% of this album is really, really good. Pelosi is a great player. Richard Evans on keyboards, terrific. I get on some songs, I get like a little tribal tech feel in spots, which, for me is a great thing. Fake Paradise is amazing. This guy, Paul DeJong, what a drummer. Really, really good. I like the electric piano tones on the album. There's really good guitar solos. My issue with this album, and it's on a couple songs, As If, that's like, I get this sense on a few tracks that they're trying to go for a late 80s, early 90s Pat Metheny group feel here by using these kind of little vocalization things. They don't work in these songs. There can only be one Pat Metheny group that can do that and do that well. They don't do it well here. I think, there's a couple songs that have these kind of vocals on them, and it's just like, as soon as I hear them, I'm like, oh God, just shut those off. But like even on a song like Explaining Naples, which is kind of soft and smooth, jazzy, and the synth tones remind me of like the Rippingtons. See, I like the Rippingtons. To me, the Rippingtons is a kind of like smooth jazz band that does that well. And I think that I can deal with. But then you got like Invisible Cities, which totally cranks, but then the vocals come in and I'm like, oh, just get rid of them. Get rid of them. I love Corner Pocket. Enable This is terrific. The bass lines are terrific on that. And then you got that Maria's Grace, which is just cut that one right off. So I think overall, this is a really strong album. What's great on here is really, really great. But 86, the vocals immediately, and then you've got a contender here. But because of those couple of tracks, it didn't make my number one. But I like most of this quite a bit.
I'll break it up. And number 2 is Sloche, Staticone. Staticonia. Do you know this thing, Jeremy? It's like a Quebec Iroquois village or something. I don't know.
No, I don't. I'm not familiar with that.
This album, there's a story behind this. Like 5 or 6 years ago, sometimes I'll do this out. If I have a downtime in my listening, which is rarely, I'll go on some site, like this time it was Prague Archives, and I checked out their jazz fusion list. This is the 10th ranked jazz fusion album of all time on there. Wow. I never heard of it at that point. So I'm like, what is this? This is right ahead of Elegant Gypsy and Enigmatic Ocean. So I'm like, what is this? It's not that good. It's good. I really like it. It's probably the only album this month that there's no clunkers on this album. This is a straight through listen for me. And I'm gonna utter a sentence here I've never said on this show. The vocal song works. This vocal song, I like it. Yeah. It's like a prog song, basically. The vocalist.
Come on, George, say it. It sounds like Star Castle.
It reminded me of yes. So Star Castle works. The guy's got a good voice, and the best thing about a fusion vocal song, one verse, no chorus, no bridge, no second verse.
Yeah, it's a quick vocal.
Yeah, move outside and let people solo. So even that's usually a speed bump on a fusion album. Not here. It's a pretty good song. Building up to the one of the 2 10-minute epics on here, Isaac Aaron. I really like that tune. It's a great closer. So what's my problem here? It's a little static. Like most of the first few times I listened to it, no songs were jumping out above other songs. And I feel the same way about the soloists. This is a sextet, double keyboards. So you got 2 keyboardists, a bass player and a guitar player. And to me, nobody's really a compelling soloist, which, it's fusion. It's like 1/3 of the song is soloing. So you'd like it to be interesting. And I don't know that these guys are really interesting soloists, but the songs, I can't fault it. I mean, it's a really good album. It's not 10th of all time, but it is good. And I would definitely recommend it. So that's my number 2. Sloche, Staticone.
Yeah, that's my number 2 as well. I have almost the same feelings about a lot of that stuff too. It's kind of, I love this stuff. Like I have a real soft spot for prog and that whole, early 70s, that whole thing. You got me right there. I was happy to listen through this album all the way through. Very enjoyable listen. But again, yeah, I agree. None of the soloists really jumped out. So it seemed like, this is going to sound really harsh, but I can't think of a better way to say it. It's almost a pointless fusion album in terms of it's more prog than fusion. I wouldn't call this fusion really. It's a good prog album. What I find most amazing about it is that a big company like RCA actually put those guys in a studio with that, and paid and put this out with like, hey, we're going to make money off this. Like, it's just so whimsical and fun and totally non-commercial, and I'm a fan of that whole thing right away. Art for art's sake, I love it. I'm a fan. They're good players. Super fun, super compelling all the way through. I love the silly mini moog sounds, and it's just whimsical and fun. Like, yeah, but in terms of fusion, putting it Elegant Gypsy, no, not there. We're not even close to there in my opinion, but really good, fun listen. I would send that to my friends who like prog, but I don't think I would send that to my friends who like fusion. because to me it really kind of wasn't that. So, but super fun. I love the old recording styles too, right? The drum sound had that. They're all. This is very of that time, and really very cool. I'm happy it exists, but that's about it.
Well, what do you think of it, Eric?
Well, obviously my number one, and Jeremy and George, you both said it. It's very proggy. There's definitely, I think the keyboards do touch on some of the fusion stuff when you get the Rhodes in there. The opening track, 10-minute, and right out of the gate, Pete, you said Star Castle, which had, I was thinking yes, like George said, but yep, you get that same. I think that's from the bass. That the bass really gives it that yes, Star Castle kind of feel. Track 2, I don't want to pronounce these because I'm going to say them wrong, but I enjoyed when the sax came in.
Yeah.
I thought that gave it a different flavor, mixed things up a little bit. And obviously they bookend this album, pretty short album, right? 40 minutes, but that's kind of the prog heyday, you 35, 40-minute album. And I think, like you said, I like the songs. There's not a bad moment on it. And George, you took my vocal part away from me, but that also, same thing. I heard it and I'm like, okay, it sounds okay. It works. And then it was over. And I'm like, perfect, let's go. I did get a Gentle Giant feel, I think, on the third track, Il Favor Barbara, or I think that's it. A lot of stop and start in that one. But I think there's a lot of nice interplay. Like you said, maybe there's not that outstanding soloist, but I think they all work well together. And then, George, you mentioned the closer is the other kind of long track, and that's a really interesting piece. And I just think there's a lot of stuff going on. And like you said, it might be more subtle. There's not that in-your-face guitar solo, or there's some nice keyboard stuff in there. But overall, I just think everything works here. And like you said, there's not a skipper. This is start to finish. It's a good listen. It's a fun listen. I really enjoyed it. And there's definitely, you get those touches of fusion, I think, from the keyboards, but I would definitely put this more in a prog vein than fusion vein. So but I loved it. So that's my number one.
Pete?
Once again, I feel like I'm just going to be rehashing what you already said. I mean, one of the first thing that came to mind is that this is equal parts prog rock as it is jazz rock, maybe even more so. And George hit the nail on the head. One of the things I wrote down in my notes is that throughout this album, the playing is fantastic, but it's more ensemble work. And I wrote down Gentle Giant and Happy the Man here multiple times because that's what I get. I hear these kind of complicated things that are all weaving around each other, but the guitar player is not ripping off a long solo. You're not getting this big long Moog solo. You're not getting a bass solo and all that sort of thing, which you normally would get in fusion. And so I definitely think this one probably leans a little bit more towards the prog end of things than fusion, but it's still really, really good. I love the piano work on this album. The bass is great. The guitar player is really good. I would have liked to have heard more. And one of the songs, I think it's on the title track, he reminds me of Larry Coryell a little bit, which I'm a big Coryell fan. So I don't know. I like this a lot. It was easily my favorite of all of them. And like George said, there's not a bad track from start to finish. Maybe it doesn't kind of wow you with some things that we normally get from this style of music, but everything works on here. And it's a really tight album, and it's an easy listen. And yeah, it was my clear number one actually here. Good stuff.
My number one is The Code. Yeah, I think for me, why I ended up pushing this into number one is when I was listening to it all week, I kept thinking that when I'm really enjoying myself listening to it, it was more often or not one of their tunes, like Enable This, Pocket, As If. A lot of the longer set pieces on here are the ones that I found myself like. Those songs really stood out to me. Pelosi sounds like a little more legato Henderson, big time, and I'd be shocked if Tribal Tech wasn't a big influence on them. I can hear it in quite a few songs,
Yeah.
but it doesn't come off cloney at all. Patrick Gilbride, I've heard him on other records, and he definitely sounds like Gary Willis to me, tone and playing. But yeah, the elephant in the room is the vocal songs. Marie, it's a vocal song and it's a ballad and it's 9 minutes. I mean, you're setting it up for failure there. And I hate the little 6-second opener and closers. Stop with that stuff, man.
Yeah.
He's talking to the guy in the practice room. But honestly, that's, between those two tracks, that's less than a minute. Yeah, the ballad is tough territory. The other song, kind of like a pseudo ballad, that Ben, word from Ben. That one, like Eric said, it picks up, and I end up enjoying that song. It's kind of like Tribal Tech has some of those songs that are like 7 or 8 minutes. They never really pick up, but they're nice melodies. I kind of put that in that folder. But really, this is more about the good songs carrying it over for me. So that's why it's my number one. Jeremy?
Me? Sorry.
too.
Yeah, the Code is as well. That was my number one. Again, for me, I'm a guitar nerd. What do you expect? I love Henderson. Pelosi is one of my favorite Toronto guys. He's just fantastic. He's got that Holdsworth. This has got some Matheny in there. It's got some I find that very compelling, and I love it. I love the way he uses the whammy bar to come down after it dips and it soars and it sails, and he's a phenomenal player and big fan. Like his tone. Paul DeLong is, like I said, he's on two of my two most latest tracks. He's a kick-ass drummer, one of my favorites, great person too. Kilbride, I talked to him like a couple weeks ago. He's a Toronto. So I know most of these guys, and they're all just at the top of the heap around here. Now, okay, and the positives are far beyond the negatives. I'm like you guys. I'm not a fan of the vocal stuff. I tend to be very polarized. I like vocal music or instrumental music. It's very rare when the two meet, and I'm happy. Usually I'm either wanting them to be quiet so I can hear the soloist, or I'm wanting the soloist to be quiet so I can hear the vocalist. I'm so torn on that. And I grew up with a classical background. My grandfather was very into classical music. So I've always been very comfortable with instrumental, letting the instruments speak. And I found it distracting and kind of just took me right out of the trip. Like I was kind of enjoying it. And then all of a sudden it's like, what's this? This doesn't seem to fit. So I didn't really like that too much, but the tunes was great. Like you said, Invisible Cities was my favorite track. And then they started singing on it and I was like, oh, too bad. I was really into that. And I was like, this just distracted me, because that's one of those things, again, and maybe it's because I'm a writer myself. It's one of those things where I'm like, oh, it's such a shame. To me, that just, it pulled me out of my zone. Right. And so that I like it out, when you're listening to an album and it's just a journey and you're just going, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And to be pulled out of that, those are signposts to me that something isn't right to me. And I'm not saying it's not right. This is just my opinion. But the other thing that bothered me about this album is I think they could have done a little bit of editing to some of the tracks. Like, I think 6 of the songs are almost 8 minutes on the button. Like they're very, very close. So as I was listening to it, I had some sort of time monotony going on. It was like, oh, another 8-minute song. And there's another 8-minute song, another 8. Like maybe the song order was a bit of a problem to me. I would have maybe stuck a 3-minute in after an 8 and, give the listener's ear a break. Again, I said this on one of the other albums too. Like this is an album where I love each song and I'd like to hear each song on its own. But if I'm going to sit down and listen to a full album, I found it a bit taxing that way because there were so many 8-minute compositions. So that's a small thing. And again, like I said about Spaced Out earlier, this would be super fun to see live. Like I would love 8, 12, 15 minutes. Go for it, guys. Like I'm all in live, but again, live is a different environment for me. And I feel it doesn't always come off on, they're sailing on some of those solos, and they're amazing, and I would love to hear that. But it's a really good album by some of the best in Canada, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. But I will probably listen to it track by track instead of full album. And again, the Henderson thing, you had me right there.
Then the follow-up album, they actually added more vocals, so that's kind of where I was out. I have the first two, and then
yeah,
it's
I
kind
know
of
they did a bunch of. There's some live clips of that. Like I know those guys were doing some. They had a vocalist. And they were doing Seal and a bunch of stuff live, and which was really interesting picks, because it's like I would like to hang out with those guys. Like some of their song picks are cool, but it's like, again, for me, it's that mix of instrumental, and I just love hearing the instruments so much, and they're all such monsters that I found the vocals just distracting. But that's just me.
No, that's all of us. Let the fusion guys do instrumentals, and let the rockers handle the vocal
That's
stuff.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
They do it well. All right. Well, the George's pick this month, I dipped into the definite obscurities with this one. A guy named James Gelfand. Album's called Time Zones, 1996. He had 2 or 3 straight ahead jazz albums before this. This is the one and only fusion album. After this, he kind of breaks off, goes into soundtrack work, TV and movie soundtrack work. So this is kind of an oddity in itself, that it's just a one and done. And like The Code, this has got a lot of Canada stalwarts of fusion, a lot of the big names of fusion. So Eric, tell me what a great friend I am by allowing you another chance to lavish praise on one of your favorite guitar players, Jerry DeVilliers Jr.
Let me just say, if this is the one and done, what a shame. This is fantastic. I love this better than any of the 4 in the Foursquare. And I know it has Jerry on it, so I'm a little biased, but holy cow, this is composition, but this is how it's done writing. I mean, these are great songs. The interplay, these guys, the track I want to mention, and I'm sorry, I am reading notes because I had to write this down because I needed to say this, because I listen for guitar. From Here to Confusion, the piano line, and then when the horns come in, that just blew me away. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, holy cow, the interplay that's going on there, the lines that are going on there, that was incredible. And of course, Jerry gets to kick in as we get into that song. That killed me. And I think that's like the 5th track, so that's maybe like halfway through. But I had to mention that song because to me, this is so well written. Pretty much everything works. This is another one I said it about the Sloche. This one I can listen to start to finish. And I actually dug how it's pretty much hard hitting, the playing. And then even when you get to the last song, and I think that's just like the piano piece that kind of takes you out of the record. That was terrific too. I didn't hear anything on this that I can't say anything bad about it. I absolutely love this. The drumming, the sax and the guitar together, the keyboard, just listening and trying to pick out what each guy is doing. They're playing different things, but everything locks in. I thought the drumming was fantastic on this. Of course, thank you very much, George. Although you did upset me saying you're not sure there's any more Jerry out there that you can find for me. So that's a damn shame, because this guy, I still can't believe I don't want to say obscure because I don't know how many people know him, but this guy should be on records. We got to get him out. We got to get him back. If he's playing, somebody bring him out and let him rip, because he's just fantastic. So, but that, George, this was killer. I'm a little sad that I was going to ask you what else in his catalog I could go get. So I'm a little sad this is only his only real fusion outing, because this killed me. This was fantastic.
Well, What's your take, Pete?
You don't need to hear from me because hey, you basically just heard it. Eric and I are like on this telepathic thing today. I don't know what it is. It's like we're.
Well, let me ask you. Let me ask you if you hear. When I first thought of putting this album in there, I hear Chick Corea Electric Band Inside Out on some of this stuff.
Yeah,
that kind of deep writing that's in that same style. You hear that too?
Yeah, and everybody gets to shine, right? It's just like this group of like virtuosos that like don't step on each other's toes, but everyone allows the other to have the moment in the spotlight. Yeah, it's great. And and Eric said it, but what did I say to you on text earlier today? I said the George's pick I think I like better than anything else we're going to talk about today. And this is the best album of the day right here. I mean, there's not a weak track on here. I love the production. You know, how can you not love Jerry DeVilliers? And he's amazing on here. But I love like the cascading keyboards and the tight interplay on the Buzzman. Such a good song. There's almost like a kind of quirky Canterbury-ish feel on Passing Zone. 11 Steps to Heaven, the opening number is just terrific. I mean, I love the sax work with Andre LaRue is his name.
Yes.
He's so good. Every guy in this band is so good, and it's just a really nice sounding recording and very classy, very melodic. It's quirky. It's fiery at times. I mean, that's what you want from a fusion album, right? And there's melodies all over the place. I mean, this is, it's not even close. This is the best album out of all the ones that we talked about today. It's really, really good. And I echo what I'll steal one of Eric's lines right now. I'm really sad that there's nothing else by this band like this that we can listen to. So, but it's great.
Yeah,
really good.
I got a bootleg, and that's it. I mean, there's a couple of songs that aren't on the album on the bootleg, so I get you guys those. For me, yeah, this is better than the stuff in the Square. It's only the George's pick because it's the definition of obscure. You know, we've been saving for obscurity zones. My favorite tracks, Inside Outside Suite. That's the one that really reminds me of Inside Out, coincidentally. From Here to Confusion, like Eric said, classic Slave Dance, and the Buzzman. The Buzzman got to be my favorite song.
Yeah, it's great.
Incredible tune. Not that fond of the one ballad on here, but it's no big deal because the rest of it just smokes. I mean, it just feels so well written. It just really gets to me. First time I ever heard it, this is actually a guy on Facebook turned me onto it, a guy named Paul Hasperhoven. He turned me onto it, and from the minute I first heard it, it affected me. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Really good stuff. I'm kind of surprised. I don't know, maybe Jeremy has a take on this. I'm kind of surprised that Elaine Caron didn't end up on this, because it's like, God, everybody else, but he's not on it. Maybe Gelfand thought he was too big a guy for it. Might ruin the ensemble vibe to it. Maybe stand out too much. I don't know, but yeah, easy 4.5 stars for me. I mean, it's just right there. What was your take, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mirror everything you guys say. Honestly, stands way above the others that are here. It's art. Like that's art. That's like right there with Pat Metheny Electric Band and the Chick stuff. And this is, you know, again, not to criticize, but the opposite of the Spaced Out album for me. This is pure writing, cinematic, and he is if I'm not mistaken, he does do film scores and stuff like that. So no surprise there. It was a journey. It was amazing. It's funny when you sent that to me, George, it was kind of after the fact. It's like, oh, here's this extra one we're listening to, and I'm like, oh, okay, it came through, and I wasn't really in a great place to check it out, and I'm like, oh, let's see what this is about, and I put it on, and I couldn't turn it off. I literally stopped what I was doing so I could finish listening to that record, and it's beautiful, like so nicely written, so intricate and interwoven, and this is what instrumental music is supposed to be like, in my opinion. It's beautiful. Yeah, and it is kind of funny that almost all of those guys, that's basically Elaine Caron's solo band. That's his entire backing band, I believe, is it not? So yeah, it is interesting that Elaine's not on it, but so that was 96. Yeah, he was pretty busy guy around that point, and UZEB was pretty run, so I imagine he would have been probably pretty hard to get at that time. and or burned out or tired or just needing a break, because they went pretty hard for a while. UZEB did there. So yeah, I don't know his personal reasons, but I'm sure, and he might have taken over too, because he is a monster too, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Gelfand didn't want it to become an Alain Caron album because, for obvious reasons, but it's beautiful. I wish he did more. I feel this exact same way as you guys did. And the sound of this album too, the mix is beautiful. I loved it. Nothing stood out. It was very, very nice for a 90s recording. Warm and beautiful. Yeah, just that's great. That's good art.
A lot of the 90s stuff had like 90s digitalis, but not on this. It sounds real organic.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's very, very nice. Yeah.
Well, next month the George's pick is maybe as obscure album called Wins, or WINS. This is a Japanese band, 1995. It figures in because the next month is going to be a live album square, a first of we're going to do a series of live album squares intermittently, like we're doing the regional ones. So it'll be a live album square. But while we have Mr. Green here, wanted to ask him a couple questions about this one.
Sure.
Was in our top 10 of Eric and I on 2021 albums, and probably would have made it for Pete, but he didn't have it long enough when we did the list. I think this was late in the year, right? Yeah. So like, tell us how it came about, and did we lose Jeremy?
Kind of froze.
Yeah, he's froze.
Oh, you might have froze.
I guess we won't be able to talk to Jeremy about this and see if there's going to be a follow-up.
I want to make a comment about Jerry DeVilliers, and I guess it's towards Eric. Isn't it frustrating when you discover like a musician or an artist that you fall in love with and they just don't have much output at all, and you just want more and you want more. And it's like, when you were talking before and kind of hinting at that, I was thinking it's kind of like for some of us who maybe didn't discover like a guy like Sean Lane till a bit later on, and maybe even after he died, and now you're like, this guy's amazing, and there's not that much out there, and it's just like, oh, you want more, but there's really nothing you could do about it, right? It's just,
and like George said, I think I might have everything, George. So this could be the end of the road.
You don't have the you have both Carons that he's on? He's on 2 Carons.
I know I have one. I may not have both. So maybe there is one more I can go on.
And there's a Polish drummer one that he's on from a couple of years ago. You got to get that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Pete. And you kind of wonder why. Why didn't he work more, or why wasn't he out there more? The fact that we got a solo album, I think we're pretty lucky too, probably, right?
Yeah. Archival. If Antoine didn't step in and put that out, I don't know. Does it sit around? Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, this is everybody watching. Just seek this out.
This is staying in heavy rotation for sure. This is just that absolutely. I guess like Jeremy said, when I listened to it, I was just, wow. I mean, that is composing. I don't know how else to put it.
You know what? The thing is, I wasn't sold that you guys were going to like it this much, because it's kind of, for me, it's kind of you get it or you don't kind of a thing. If you don't hear it, the brilliance of it, I could see someone going, it's good. I didn't think you guys would do that, but the possibility existed. But I'm glad it affected both of you guys and Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good to see that we were all pretty much in line tonight. So
Very nice.
Wow, that sounded like I ran out of the room screaming. Sorry guys, my computer just crapped right out there. So yeah.
I was just going to ask you about how it came about, how long you were working on the songs, how you decided about your sideman, that kind of thing.
Well, a lot of it became a COVID project, to be honest. I mean, some of the songs I had been writing and preparing for, And then all of a sudden we got into this period of time where, you know, a bunch of players were in home studios. And are you guys still there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. We got into, so we just started, I was talking to, I'm friends with Oz Noy. And we were just talking at the beginning of COVID, and I'm like, oh man, we should do something. I'd love to have you on one of my tracks. And he's like, yeah, I'm totally down for that. And then I always also work with Rich Brown in Toronto here. And so, you know, and then so I was talking to Oz, and I didn't know Keith Carlock very well at that point. So I'm like, hey man, do you think Keith would be into doing this? And so he said, here's his number, give him a call, reach out. So I did, and Keith had some time and he was down to try it. And so it all started with one tune. And we just, you know, Keith had a blast doing it. He loved it. And he's like, hey man, let's do more of these, right? So that became very fun at that point, because what I started doing was I started writing the tracks and then thinking of the guys that I like who would do well on that, who that's their thing, right? So I sort of kind of started writing it directed with these guys in mind, right? So I knew they'd bring their thing to it and bring it to life, and so each track kind of just evolved over time, and as it grew, it kind of snowballed along, and more guys wanted to be a part of it and were willing, and so yeah, it just became a really fun thing to do during a time when literally we were all trapped inside and everyone wanted to be on stage or doing their thing. But you know, you got to do what you got to do. When the sun shines, you got to make hay, right? So that was the genesis of it. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It definitely sounds like you wrote the tune with Wooten on it, with him in mind.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, same with probably the most obvious one is the Billy Sheehan tune, right? But yeah, I had to give him a ripper, right? Because he's the king of that, right?
I was going to mention that you did something that I wish I could say everybody does, but they don't. You got names that people know and like, and you give them a spot to play. I hate when I see a guy's name on an album, you get it, and then he's just another guy. Like they don't let him do anything.
Yeah, I had no intention of that. I'm as big of a music fan as all of you guys, right? Like I love these guys. These are, you know, they're my heroes too. I think they're incredible players and they're deeply inspiring. And if I can provide a platform for them to do their absolutely amazing thing, that's my goal. You know, because I know the thing is, you know, you don't have to direct these guys either. These are real seasoned pros, right? So I have 100% faith that they were, I gave them no direction really. You know, it's sort of, here's the track. This is what I want to do. I'd like you to do your thing. I told them right off the front, I probably won't have any changes to your part. Just if you like it and it's what you want to do with the track, then that's what we're going to do. We're going to do it like a band. Like it's as close to a band as you can do, right? I didn't want to, it makes no sense to me to bring in Jimmy Haslip and then tell him what I want, right? It's like, they're geniuses, right? So, you know, you guys do your thing, I'll do my thing. And it's about a joyous celebration really of instrumental playing. I love it. I miss it. You know, the grunge kind of killed soloing. Like grunge really sucked a lot of the fun out of just being able to rip on an instrument. Like it became uncool, like because I guess the air metal thing got too far and people went, oh, you know, whatever. But it's like, you know, for an old dog like me, I was like, I miss it. I miss the chops. I miss that in playing, and it vanished for a long time. Even a lot of the fusion that was coming out, it was very like the early Snarky Puppy stuff. I love it, but they didn't really play their asses off in the early stuff. It was still restrained, and I missed that Wild West style shootout where the guys just go for it. And you know, so I thought to myself, you know, if I like this stuff, certainly there's other people who would feel the same way. And I really don't care. So I'm writing it for me, and that's what I like. And I like players to shine, and I want everybody to have fun and not work too hard, you know, hard enough, but not so hard that it's damaging. I love improv. I love that. So anything you can do to foster an environment that makes people comfortable to play their ass off is to me great. So that was my purpose with the whole thing, was to give them a spot to shine and just make it fun. Right.
It worked.
Cool.
Well, thank you.
I can assume you want to do a follow-up. Are you going to be able to make it happen?
Oh yeah. I'm I'm in Canadian summer right now, right? So we get like 3 months of extremely beautiful weather, and cottages and far too much beer and you know, time with family and friends and all that stuff. So, you know, in all honesty, right now, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a holiday and just sort of spending some time with the family and the kids and, you know, doing all that, right? So in the fall, you know, that's one thing we always complain, Canadians always complain about winter, but winter is a beautiful time to get shit done. Like I get a lot of stuff done in the winter. Summer is just a festival of sausages and beer, you know. So, like you know, it's kind of fun. I like half of these albums do like that. You know, that last album we listened to, that's like cottage music up here, like driving up to the cottage 2 hours and throw on an album like that, you know. So yeah, that's what my summers are about here is really sort of that. So there will be a follow-up at some point. I don't know what yet. It's still in its infancy, but something will come. I just gotta get down to it. It'll happen. But.
Cool.
Forward to it.
Oh yeah. My favorites are Big Shoes and Car Rock. I love both of those. This is a straight through listen though. I mean, it really is.
Well, that's great. Thank you. I love Car Rock. It's kind of funny. That's kind of my silent favorite of the bunch. It's a lot of fun. The one I love too is yeah, Big Shoes with LaFave. I love that track. It's just it's funny how some of them turn out, right? When you're writing stuff, I don't know if you guys write music or whatever, but sometimes you hear stuff and it's like it didn't quite hit the mark of what I wanted it to. It's cool, but it's slightly different. And then some stuff turns out really, really close to what you wanted. And Big Shoes and Car Rock, both of those tracks were kind of what I wanted from it. They really worked. The other ones are good too, and they're good in their own right. And some of them are better than what I heard in my head. But yeah, those two, I have a soft spot for both of those two as well. And I love playing with Oz too, and Oz is on that track on Car Rock, and that's always fun. He's just a monster and such a funny person too.
No problem getting a hold of dudes like this. You got some pretty big names on here. No problem getting phone numbers for these guys or what?
No, I mean, it's kind of funny. Like those guys, I don't want to call it a club, but I mean, you know, they just want to do heavy shit, right? So if you're bringing stuff, you got to be able to bring it first, and then secondly, if they like working with you and that they like the other players that are on it too, right? Like it's, you know, it's pretty compelling to go and say, hey, I've got Keith Carlock on drums and Oz Noy. Hey, Jimmy, you want to play? And Jimmy's like, hey, those guys are awesome. Yeah, that'll probably be up to a standard he likes, right? So you're kind of only as good as the company you keep sometimes, right? So yeah, I mean, it helped me in the first place getting Carlock. Keith's a great guy too, and just he's one of my favorite drummers on the planet. Like that was kind of a wish list item for me. Like I just shot that out to Oz just hoping. It's like I'd love to get Keith on this, right? And he's like, give him a call, right? So I'm like, all right. So he didn't know me really at all at that point. So, you know, getting him and having him show enthusiasm for the project, and he wanted to do the full thing. He was right into it. You know, he was like, it went from me to him. His tracks always went second. You know, because I wanted him to have the ultimate freedom to write his rhythm. He's so rhythmic, right? Like you kind of got to let him, in my opinion, I love hearing him do his thing. Very active with his kick drum and all that stuff. So the bass player can then lock into that. Whereas if the bass player went before him, maybe he would lock on to what the bass player was doing. So I didn't want to do that. So I really wanted to work with Keith and make that all happen. And then everything else can come out from around that. So that worked out really well. And fortunately, I was able to do stuff he likes. And yeah, it's great. But yeah, the guys were great, and you know, some of them were very helpful too. Jimmy Haslip is one of the greatest people on the planet. He helped me like I didn't know Robin Ford at all, and he was just kind of like a childhood hero of mine, right? So getting him on a track was pure Jimmy. I was like, Jimmy, can you get Robin? Like, I would love to have Robin on this thing, right? And so he's like, let me call him, let me see what he'll do, right? So you know, that having those guys in your corner is awesome, and they're great. And again, they just want to play. They just want to do good stuff. So if you're doing good stuff, and you know, they get excited just like anyone. They're just happen to be monsters, right? So
Cool. Yeah. So I guess that wraps up another episode of 4Fusion Friday, right, guys? So
Yeah.
nice job. So as always, and Principal Gary, make sure you get everybody in line and get listening to these 5 records here, and start reporting down in the comments what you think of these albums. And we want to thank Jeremy Green for joining us here today. It was a pleasure having you on. And
that was so fun, guys. That was a lot of fun.
cool. Hopefully we see you again on the show sometime in the near future.
Anytime.
Cool.
Thank you.
So stay tuned for another episode of 4Fusion Friday next month, where, as George mentioned, we'll be having a live album theme. So we'll be revealing what those albums are in the coming weeks, and we will be busy listening. So till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. Jeremy, to get a copy of your album, go to your Bandcamp page. Is that the best?
JeremyGreenGuitar.com. Yeah, my website's the best place to get it from.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good. So thanks for watching, everybody. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button. And we'll see you next month here on 4Fusion Friday. For Jeremy Green, Eric Porter, and George Lamie, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.